Hello random people, welcome to Random Garage, the channel where we're always doing something.
Ding ding dong. What's going on? Ding ding. Crazy.
Today on Random Garage, we'll be doing a rocker box gaskets replacement on this 2003 Harley Sportster 1200. I've already got the seat and the saddlebags off and just loosened up the tank and lifted up, set it on a 2x4. So the front bolt on the tank is a little loose and just got it lifted up, put a little piece of 2x4 under there to keep it upright, and then we should have, once I get this wiring harness kind of out of the way, plenty of access. Oh, it looks like the coil's got to come off too, but I mean, as far as the fuel tank's concerned, we don't need to drain the fuel. It's always a pain with these crossover lines, and take the fuel tank completely off. That's not necessary. You see here on this thing how the lower rocker box gasket is leaking. Oily mess all over the place. It's even down, getting all the way down to the exhaust flange there. So that's because this gasket under here is leaking. And then they come as a set, so might as well just do both at the same time. But it looks like there's just a slight bit of leakage from the front one too. So yeah, do both at once. I'm gonna just start with taking the air cleaner cover off here, just for slightly easier access to the rocker boxes, if I can get these screws to break loose. So there, the cover's off and the air filter. That's a little bit better. I might take the whole plate off later when I get into it, if it's still kind of in the way. We'll see. I'm gonna just take this fuel line vent and just kind of push it up there so it's kind of out of the way. That should be enough room to lift the upper cover up and pull it out when we're ready to do that. I'm gonna just pull the spark plug wires off of the coil here, just to get them a little more out of the way. And then there's a little clearance here. I might not need to take the coil off at all. It'd be nice if I don't. So we'll see. If I need to, we'll do that afterwards. But for now, I'll just pull the spark plug wires off. The coil here needs to come off for sure, because otherwise I can't really get to this one screw. So we'll pull these two bolts out of the coil and then disconnect the wires right here and get the coil out of the way. Unfortunately, this ignition switch cover is preventing me from getting at the head of this bolt on the coil here, so yeah, gonna have to get that off. So to get the ignition switch cover off, there's this mounting screw right here, which is easier to access when the tank is off, but that's not too bad. I can get in there. So this ignition switch still won't come out because it's trapped by this bracket, which you got to take the tank off to get that bracket off. But just having the screw out of it, now I can just move it, and that'll give me enough room to get this this screw out and get the coil off. Okay, now I got the coil out of the way, and then I'll go ahead and pull the spark plugs out just to relieve compression, so it's easier to turn the engine over, because I'll have to roll the wheel over to get it at top dead center on the compression stroke, so that the valves are completely closed, which means there's the least, or well, theoretically no spring pressure on them, and that just makes removal of the rocker arms and reinstallation of the rocker arms a lot easier, because you're not trying to fight the valve springs. Somebody put NGK spark plugs in this thing, and it's got the tops that screw on. They're not even tight. These things are so dumb. They vibrate loose when you're going down the road if they're not cranked tight enough, and then you start to lose your connection from the spark plugs. So I'll be trying to take a pliers and get those as tight as I can so that they don't come loose when she's riding her bike. Neither of these spark plugs were even tight. They were just snug. They were not torqued properly, so that's not good. Whoever worked on this bike before made a few mistakes. On this main harness here, there's just a big tie wrap holding it to the frame here, so when I cut that one, I should be able to pull it down out of the way. That just barely gets it to move. I can get access to the screw now, but it's gonna kind of be in the way. Well, we'll try that. Otherwise, if it still gives me problems, I'll cut this one too that someone just threw on there. Ah, heck, we'll just cut it anyway. Okay, that's minimally better. Now, basically the first thing for disassembling the rocker covers is to take these 4 Allen head screws out of the top. This is a great tool set for getting into these tight spaces. This is what I'll be using for those rocker box screws, because you can't get a regular ratchet in there, so it's like a little ratcheting handle. And then these little bits here, it's going to be this one. 3/16, and those go in there and give you access. You get access with this in tight spaces. And ratchets, if you want to go the other way, you just flip the tool around. It goes the other way. Can't remember where I got it from, but it says on there WFMC Incorporated, Rockville, Connecticut. Mini Ratchet 400. But I see already that even this tool is too long to get in here. There is a specialty tool that's really flat that gets in there on those, or else you can just take a regular Allen key and cut it off short so you can fit in there. And I believe I have one built, if I can find it. And then this one here, let's pull this rubber bushing off that post to get more clearance, and then yeah, we're in the same situation there. So that's going to be a long process to get those out, quarter turn at a time, but that's the way it goes. I found my shortened Allen key that I thought I had, but I was pretty excited when I actually found that thing, but it turns out it's actually a 5mm metric, not a 3/16 inch standard, so it won't fit. And I got to take one of my 3/16 ones and cut it off like this. But first, since this one has a little clearance, this ball end hex will go in there fairly straight, and then should be able to get it loose with pliers. There it goes. So that'll be slightly faster for this one. The other one I still need the cutoff tool for. Okay, there, I cut off a 3/16 Allen so that I can get this last bolt out. It wasn't very tight. I've got it out as far as I can get it, and now even that short Allen is going to hit the tank mount boss here, but that's where we then finish it up with needle nose. I got these ones with a little curvature on the tip. They're nice for grabbing an Allen head like that, and you can turn it the rest of the way out. The front cylinder cover was easy, but this one was a little bit of a jigsaw puzzle. Finally figured out that if you get it just right, it slides out the left side. Now this is where I have to jack it up and spin the wheel to rotate the engine a little bit, because you can see this rocker arm is slightly elevated, so that intake valve on the front cylinder here has a little bit of spring pressure on it. So we got to roll it down so that each of the push rods have no pressure on them, so that the rockers, when I take out these rocker bolts, they don't just blow right off. So I got the wheel lifted up a little bit, shifted it into high gear. In order to get it past third, I had to rock the wheel a little bit, and I was able to get it all the way up into fifth gear. And then as I crank the wheel and then the engine goes around, the rockers are moving a little bit there. They're both closed on this cylinder, and they're closed on this cylinder. So that's all we were looking for. Right there when they're level, closed. So then we take the rocker boxes off. Next thing is getting the centerpiece off here. If it's not loose, then it should be a little bit stuck. Just kind of pop it with a soft hammer a little bit until it loosens up. Next thing that comes out is these two Allen head screws on each rocker box. Then it's the inner fasteners that come out. There's 3 on each. One there, and one down right in there. Last thing is these 4 rocker arm bolts, and they get removed. Supposed to do it in like quarter turn increments in order to have the whole rocker box here come up evenly, because there is still some spring pressure in there, just not much, so you don't want it to come up way crooked. Then it'll just put like a bending stress on the other bolts that are in there. And what I meant by quarter turn increments is that you alternate, you go around the rocker box, you turn that one a quarter turn, then that one a quarter turn, and that one a quarter turn, and that one a quarter turn, and keep working your way around. The way I do it, I go a half turn, but I just go here, 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 there, and then work my way back around, and just keep going back and forth. Eventually you'll get to the point where there's a gap between the head of each bolt and the rocker box, and then and you can just wiggle the rocker box. Then when it's loose like that, then you can just pull the bolts all the rest of the way out, one at a time. And with those 4 bolts out, then just lift off the rocker box. The gasket's just shredded. It's probably the original paper gasket. It's garbage. On this rear one, there's not even enough room to the frame for it to come out on its own. It's stuck on the push rods, so just grab a slippery push rod, get it up out of there. Again, a bit of a jigsaw puzzle, but this rocker box does eventually come out the left side. So these OEM or OEM style paper gaskets are just crusty. They just disintegrated when I pulled the rocker boxes off. Half are stuck in the rocker box, and other pieces are stuck here on the engine. This is where the leak was, right around here on this cylinder, and on the front one right through here. Got this new Kinetic gasket kit for the bike. This kit here comes with all the new gaskets needed for top and bottom of the 3 pieces, and the paper gasket that was leaking that I was just showing in the Kinetic kit, it's a instead a steel gasket. Much more reliable. Completely better design. That'll last longer than those original ones did, so probably the bike will never need this job done to it again. Most of this old gasket stuff is flaking off pretty easy with just a fingernail, but some of the spots are a little more crusty, so then just using a razor blade. It's one of these are also regular, like shaving razor. Get under there and peel it off. Sometimes there'll be just a little like lump on there, so it's not totally smooth, and I just kind of hit it sideways like that. Scrape a little bit off of there, get it cleaned up so the surface is nice and smooth, no imperfections to screw up the new gasket. Okay, it took about 45 minutes, but now the gasket surfaces on top of the heads and bottom of the rocker boxes here are all nice and cleaned up. Got all the old crusty gasket scratched off of there. So now, time to start putting it back together. These new Kinetic gaskets, we'll just set those on the head first with the words pointed so that upward you can read them. They're just kind of stamped in there. So then just set the rocker box on there and try and keep the gasket kind of in position. And then we'll take and start putting in the 4 long black bolts and try and get them to hold the gasket in position. Look underneath, hit the hole a bit. Of course, then putting it together, got to make sure that the push rods are up in the little rounded recesses in the rocker arms here. Make sure they don't miss the mark. Mine are all set in the right place, so they should stay there now. As I tighten down the rocker box, they should stay in place. And next is get these 3 bolts started. There was the one there, one down in there, and one right there. So that just get them threaded in a little bit by hand. Of course, then it's same on the rear cylinder, but have to also put the push rods back in. I laid them down in the order they came out. This one was towards the rear, the exhaust one. This one was towards the front of the rear cylinder, or towards the inside of the engine. They would be the opposite on the front cylinder. This is the intake one, and it also has 1 red stripe on it, and the exhaust one has 3 pink stripes. And then finally get these little Allen head screws here and here started, and then we can start tightening everything down. Now to start tightening everything up, start by doing the larger black bolts, and do them once I get the heads down so that they're close to the rocker box. Do them 1 turn at a time, alternating. So I'll go like here, and then back over here, and then this one, and then this one, and then back to here, and over there, and here, and there. 1 turn at a time until they're snug. Now that the 4 larger bolts are snug, now snug up the 3 hex head bolts and the 2 Allen head bolts. And these 4 bolts get tightened to between 18 and 22 foot-pounds. I like to go a little high of the average on the range all the time. I'm going to set my wrench at 21, and then again cross pattern over there, here, over there. And the 3 hex head screws, there, and there. Those get torqued to 135 to 155 inch-pounds, so I'll go 145 would be in the middle. I'll just go 150. The reason I like to go a little bit above the average when the fasteners are not new, they've already been in the bike once, take them out, put them back in, is because they've already been stretched once. And so I like to just go a little above the average to stretch them a little further, since they're already theoretically slightly stretched, slightly weakened, even though they shouldn't have been stretched beyond their elastic range where they can't like spring back to their normal shape. I still feel just that it's safer to go just a little bit high with a used fastener. And then finally the Allen head screws, which are the same as the last ones, 135 to 155 inch-pounds. So I'm going to do 150 inch-pounds. Now that all the rocker box bolts are properly torqued, we'll just lay the rocker box gaskets on. These Cometic gaskets are, these rubber ones are not one-sided. It doesn't matter if they go, if you put this side up or the other side up, because they're symmetrical across their cross section. Top of that has a little groove and the other side does too, so they're all like that, so it doesn't matter which side goes up. Next, then, drop the rocker spacer on and be really careful that the gasket sits into the groove in the bottom of the rocker spacer and ends up in its home exactly where it belongs and not twisted or pushed out or pinched, so that we get a good seal. Of course, if you forget to install the new breather gasket, then you take the spacer back off and do that. The breather gasket goes towards the inside of the engine on each spacer, because that goes to the actual screw that is on the air cleaner. Hold it through. These rocker boxes are used, they're identical parts, but they're used on the front and the rear cylinder. So they each have two spots to put a breather gasket, but it goes in a different location on each. The breather gasket is here because then the breather screw for the air cleaner is there. Same then on the rear cylinder, that breather gasket will be right here because the screw is right here. Rear cylinder, breather gasket there, no breather gasket. Front cylinder, breather gasket there, no breather gasket there. Now with the rocker spacer on, put the next gasket on there. Again, make sure it's all down in the grooves. When the top cover goes on, the screws that held it on had a like a rubber washer underneath. The Cometic kit comes with little looks like almost like a fiber washer and a copper washer, which will go underneath that regular washer because that washer doesn't come off of that screw at all. The stock washers left quite a bit of residue on these covers, so I'm scraping that off with a small chisel, since I can't really get a razor blade down in that recess, but this small chisel is sharp and works. It's about razor sharp and works well to scrape that old gasket material off of there. So then, just drop that top cover on again and make sure the gasket stays in place. And put the screws in to hold it with the copper washer and the fiber washer underneath there. Of course, some of the screws have some leftover gaskets stuck on there too, so got to scrape that off, clean them up. I actually think that the reason for the copper gasket is so that you don't have to scrape any of the residue off the bottom of the stock washer, but so I'm not making them perfect. I got them, but I got them pretty good. They're fairly smooth. The copper gasket will flex and squish a little bit and take up a little bit of that space, that roughness caused by there being a little bit of the gasket left on there. So the torque on these last screws is 120 to 168 inch-pounds, so that's pretty liberal. There's a lot of wiggle room there. I'll be shooting for like 150 inch-pounds, but when you get to these two, you can't actually get the torque wrench on there, so I'll have to use another tool, the tool that I used to get them apart. So what I'll do is I'll do all the other 6 that I can access with the torque wrench, and I'll get a feel for how much force it kind of feels like to tighten it on that short of a tool, and then I'll just try to simulate that torque, that force on those other 2 screws that you can't get a torque wrench on. That's about the only way you can do it with the engine in the bike. Well, so since whoever put spark plugs in this thing last didn't torque them properly. It's worth mentioning that the spark plug torque is 12 to 18 foot-pounds. So that's it then. New rocker box gaskets all set in place. All that's left then is put everything else back together, put the coil back on, hook up the spark plug wires, and knock that choke off, but put the air cleaner back on, drop the tank, and do a test start. If you want to see more random garage things, hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and hit the bell notification so you'll get random notifications when a new random garage video is posted. Thanks for watching, and whatever you do, make sure you're always doing something.